Alright, this is another not gameplay video. We're going to be looking at how to pilot Rug, Temur Delver, if you prefer the con's name. I like the color combination name, but having Knuckleblade in the deck might be the watermark we needed to push it over the edge for me to be willing to call it Temur. This is going to be piloting Delver against Gx Tron. Not Eldrazi Tron, which is currently more prominent, but somehow I haven't played against it as much, so I'm not going to make a playlist about it yet. Tron is weird. Tron plays somewhere between combo and ramp, which is kind of on the big mid-range, almost control side of things. So on the one hand, Tron is essentially a combo of put 3 lands together and the payoff is casting massive spells. But to be fair, all ramp decks are kind of like that. And on the other hand, it's just a ramp deck. They're going to get their mana, and then you just need to deal with it. Either way, we want to disrupt them and clock them, which conveniently fits into Delver just like the matchup against Storm does. So let's look at it a bit. Against Tron, we are the undisputed beatdown. You do not want to go late against Tron. Please don't. Please don't. You need to clock them as quickly as possible. If you do not, Ugin will eat you. I have played against Ugin. It's not fun. You don't want to do it. Just don't go for the late game. I'm sure nobody was, but I just wanted to emphasize that. These are our clocks. They are the best cards in the deck against Tron. You will love them. So basically, you want to get a clock down as quickly as possible. Delver on 1, Goyf on 2. I'm actually kind of happy with that, especially if we have Shoal to counter an expedition map or something like that. That's fantastic. Turn 1 Thought Scour, turn 2 Mandrills, love it. Might be too slow, but I still love it, because you just need to play a clock right away and then counter some stuff. If you can, you want to spend your denials, your mana leaks, your spell snares, your disrupting shoals on expedition maps, Sylvan Scryings, Ancient Stirrings, and sometimes even eggs, Chromatic Sphere and Chromatic Star, because those are the things that are going to dig them towards their Tron lands. And basically, those are the enablers if you're looking at Tron as a combo deck. So if you counter their enablers and you clock them quickly enough, you're going to win. Unless, of course, they have natural Tron, but then you're probably doomed regardlessly. So just try not to tilt against that. I know a lot of people absolutely hate playing against Tron. It and Lantern Control are probably 2 of the most hated decks on the internet, or at least what you would get from reading Reddit posts and comments. But if you tilt against it, you're going to have a worse time, and you're also going to play much worse. So just try not to tilt. You can do it. I believe in you guys. Go for their enablers, clock them right away. There are a few things you need to play around, such as Oblivion Stone. If they cast an Oblivion Stone, you basically need to treat it like a Supreme Verdict. Pre-board, when you don't have your artifact destruction in, if Oblivion Stone resolves, they will be wiping your board sooner or later. So you either need to race that and kill them before it happens, or get them into burn range and have the requisite burn, or you need to pace your threats, force them to crack it, and then play more threats. It's very important that you play intelligently around Oblivion Stone, because if you race when you shouldn't be racing it, well, you're going to run out of threats, and you're probably going to have an even worse time. At the same time, if you do think you can kill them, you should probably go for the kill. Especially if you don't think you'll be able to beat them if the O-Stone goes off. Holding up mana for that is very nice. On the draw, or on the play if you somehow don't have a turn 1 play, say you're going for turn 1 Thought Scour, turn 2 Mandrills, it's nice to have Denial up if you can. Obviously that's not a decision you'll actively be making, but You shouldn't be thought scouring on your turn anyways in that situation, but if you do think you should, consider holding up the mana so you could denial if it's relevant. A similar thing happens on turn 2 especially, where it's a lot more relevant for, do I commit to the board or do I hold up disruption? Usually, you want to clock first. That goes in general for Delver decks because we're on the tempo side of aggro control. So we want to play our threats, then our answers. But at the same time, if you, for whatever reason, really think that they have an enabler that they're about to slam, say they place, let's say they keep a 7, and they don't have a turn 1 expedition map, and they play, say, a non-Tron land. Green-Black Tron plays the new Green-Black Fast land, which... Blooming Marsh, that's the name of it. I blanked for a second. Say they start on Blooming Marsh, and they don't have expedition map. They don't have a turn 1 play. Either they're holding up a Fatal Push, which I could see, or they kept that hand for a reason. Usually people keep hands for a reason, and you should always assume you're playing against a good player who makes good decisions than a bad player who makes bad decisions, or even any player who makes bad decisions. Because if you play around the good decisions, usually you're better off. You don't play around your opponent making bad moves in chess, so you shouldn't do that in Magic. So if they keep a hand, they keep a 7, and they start off on not a Tron land, and they don't have an enabler, chances are there's a very good reason that they kept that hand, and I would expect a Sylvan Scrying to be coming soon. Although, it's kind of weird that they didn't play a Tron land, so maybe that's a pretty moot example, but there are definitely situations where you want to consider not playing your clock, especially if you went turn 1 Delver and say you have a Goyf in hand. Think about it. You obviously have to feel out the situation. Every game is going to play out differently. You basically have to figure out what they probably are going to do and how the game would go if they have it and if they don't. Our burn spells are at a record bad position in this matchup because they don't have things that you want to bolt. Sometimes you can finish off a Karn with a bolt, or put Ugin low enough that it's not quite as much of a threat if it already did something. But for the most part, these are going to face, and you can even do it proactively. If you're holding up Denial and they don't do anything, say you have a Steam Vents untapped, it's their end step, you have Denial and Bolt in hand, just bolt their face. It gets something into the graveyard. It's especially relevant if it's a Tarfire, because it's less good against their Planeswalkers, and it also is a card type for Traverse and Goyf, so you can accelerate Mandrills doing that, you can make Snapcaster slightly better, you can basically save on your mana if things are tight, use your burn spell now, untap, play your clock, maybe you have another burn spell, then you untap Snapbolt, finish them off, something like that. So that's a very important thing to look out for. In a lot of matchups you don't want to proactively burn face. This is one of the ones where you do. Vapor Snag is good. It's amazing when it's good, and it's awful when it's bad. If they have World Breaker or Wormcoil Engine, Vapor Snag can win you the game. If they don't have a creature, it's dead. Unless you use it to save one of your guys, which can come up, to be fair. That's a little more relevant with Simic Charm because you won't be taking damage off of it. This is one of the matchups where you would rather have Simic Charm for the Giant Growth versatility, and also the Hexproof mode, which is relevant. Sometimes Tron decks run Fatal Push, like I said, Green-Black does. Green-Red sometimes runs Bolt. Green-White definitely plays Path. So that is absolutely relevant. Dismember is probably just strictly worse than Vapor Snag. I would board this out, and I am going to be boarding that out when I go to the part where I sideboard. You can temporarily shrink a Wormcoil Engine, which can let you get trample damage through, or if you have multiple attackers, maybe they were counting on the lifelink to survive, but in general, this isn't great. It doesn't kill things, so it's just as temporary a fix as Vapor Snag, but it also doesn't have the tempo advantage to it. Thought Scour's amazing. Don't board them out. You want your clock fast. Thought Scour's going to help with that. You want your Goifs big. Thought Scour's going to help with that. Visions is obviously good. Traverse, we don't really care about the late game, so the only good thing about Traverse is finding a basic land. If you're stumbling, or if you need to accelerate out of Hooting Mandrills and you don't have a land drop, it gets you your land for the turn and puts something in the graveyard. Could make Goif bigger if you're low on sorceries, that kind of thing. Lands are obviously something we need. I think that's all the general stuff against Tron. Basically, you want to clock them, you want to disrupt their enablers. If you weren't able to disrupt their enablers, try to counter a top-end spell or two, because sometimes that buys you the turn you need to win the game. And they will have Natural Tron a percentage of the time. I have shoaled Expedition maps only for the opponent to go Tronland, 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 Haymaker. It sucks. Just be strong and deal with it. Let's look at sideboarding against Tron. Artifact Hate looks pretty good because you can kill O-Stones, you can kill eggs if that comes up. Revelry is also a little bit of burn. I don't like explosives, I don't think, because it's pretty slow. You can destroy Wormcoil engines, which is fantastic, especially if you're trampling through, because then they don't even get to block that turn with the tokens. Rejection is new to my sideboard, but I think I want it. It counters a good deal of enablers and most of the haymakers. Blood Moon is something I want in this matchup. Spell Snare can come in. I probably don't want Vapor Snag. Staticaster seems awful. These 5 cards all just seem awful. Huntmaster is too slow. Sometimes I board it in for threat density. That's one copy I would board in. As basically a hedge, where you think if the game goes long, they will probably run me out of threats, and Huntmaster can help close the game, especially through a Wormcoil engine if you just need a couple extra points. But I'm not really looking to board it in unless I have to. Let's put that over here. Vapor Snag, like I said, is okay, but it's really not great, and it's awful when it's bad. What do we board out? Knuckleblade looks slow. Usually I board out 1 Mandrills because while I want the clocks, I also don't want to flood out on Mandrills. I like boarding out a Snapcaster Mage because it's basically the same late game problem I talked about with Storm. Snapcaster Mage is great. It gives you reach, it gets bolts and denials and mana leaks, and that's all fantastic. And it can even add to a clock, and it has flash, so you can do it at instant speed. But it excels in the late game, and that's not really where we want to be, especially if we're stumbling on land drops. Having 2 Snapcaster Mages in your hand against Tron can be extremely bad, so we're more looking to hedge against that. I actually almost want Hooting Mandrills back in the deck, because now we just have 11 threats. So I'm going to do that for now. Let's put it with the Huntmaster. It might come, it might go. I like Shoal because it counters Expedition Map, which is really good. I think I want to cut a Denial, even though it has a really large number of targets. I kind of want to cut down on counterspells a little bit, especially because I'm bringing in more. I think Rejection has more targets than Denial, and Diversifying has at least some advantage. Vapor Snag and Dismember are gone. I want to cut a number of burn spells. Probably that many. I could probably get away with cutting a Traverse. So let's bring these in. We'll put them on top of Disrupting Shoal. And we're going to bring Hooting Mandrills back, even though it's bad if you have too many. Just like all good things, too much is a bad thing. But it's also integral to our plan. So I think I just want to maximize our chances of having an early clock. Even if we end up having a dead card in hand, it's not going to matter if they're dead. So I think this is pretty good. I'm not boarding in the Huntmaster. I think we have enough relevant things. I just want to do a Disrupting Shoal check, because this is specifically a matchup in which I want it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because 2 of the Disrupting Shoals count. So we have 5 2 CMC blue card pitches to Disrupting Shoal, which really isn't bad. I like having 5 or 6. Sometimes even 4 is okay, but that pretty much means you just have the shoals and something else, so I'd probably end up boarding them out if it comes to that. It's more of a case-by-case basis, though, so I don't want to make a general statement. How about the ones? 4 Delvers, 2 of those, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, plus 8, 18, that's fantastic. Really, you want a shoal and expedition map, and this configuration looks pretty good at doing that, so I think I'm happy with that. That would be how I would sideboard against Gx Tron today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. Thank you all for watching. Please give me feedback. I will see you in the next one.